Hi everybody, Louise Plant here with my 144 topics, and this month it's International Women's Month. So I'm going to do a series of talks here and about different subjects, and the subject title this week is that it's time to speak out. And I really want to explore this whole thing here about speaking out. So, when I was raised, I was always told children were seen and not heard. When I was married, I was told it was a woman's duty to do certain things. So, it's very easy for us to sometimes be raised in a society or to have an upbringing where we can be criticised for what we can be doing, or we can not be acknowledged for who we are. We can feel not validated. It's a very common feeling for a lot of people, like wanting to feel validated. And we can sort of sometimes get into this compliant space of going along to get along. If we're in an environment or raised with a compliant mother or a compliant father, then we can quite often role model that behaviour, and we can actually be doing the same thing. So, with my background as well, sometimes it was just easier to shut up and to not say anything. And sometimes, I would feel I would be punished for what I did. So in the end, we just end up not speaking up and being quiet. So, some of us can rebel. I rebelled as well, but then some of us can sort of, withdraw. We can tend to, extrovert ourselves or introvert ourselves. So part of this talk today really is about just getting yourself into a space where you can feel comfortable and okay just to speak out. And it's like, instead of, when we want to say yes, we say no. When there are thoughts and things that we have in our minds that we want to say, that we just don't speak out. So, speaking out is really about honouring yourself, and it's about learning to communicate and to honour ourselves. And last week I spoke about, how we're not taught to communicate, and, that I sort of explored a bit of that. So, what tends to happen, and again, I'm just generalising here, is that sometimes, we feel we want to say things and we don't, and then we just let it ride, we let it ride, and then the one thing happens and that's it. Suddenly we become very overreactive, and then we go blah, 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 and we can just spit poison at people, okay? And that really is not a healthy way of learning to speak out. So, the aim in learning to speak out is just really finding yourself in a space where you're actually feeling quite good, you're feeling quite grounded, and you're feeling quite settled, and actually learning to speak and say what it is that you want to say. And that can take a lot of practice and time. Being raised with sexual abuse, I found it very hard to speak out, when I was really intimate with somebody, and I just wouldn't do anything or say no, or that's uncomfortable, or I don't like that, or can we do this? So it's something that you do have to train yourself to, and you've got to push yourself out of that comfort zone. So remember, when we're living in a world and we're just sort of going along and everything's okay, if we stay in that little bubble, we're not actually growing. So for us to actually grow and to change, then, it is important for us to go into that space of feeling a little uncomfortable and actually saying something and speaking out our truth. So being females, speaking your truth applies to men, women, children, like there's no sort of gender differences there as well. Though females, they say on average we use about 7,000 words, and men on average use about 1,000 words. So for us as women, it's very therapeutic for us to talk. We can just talk things out. So sometimes it's worth knowing, is there a time for you to be talking that out, say with your girlfriends, or is that a time to be talking that out with a family or a partner or a loved one? Sometimes it might be necessary if there's a lot of emotional charge there, if you're feeling reactive, that you might either want to write it out. When we journal and we write, it helps us to be very clear about what's happening and to be quite precise about what's going on. Or it could be a case of picking up the phone, having a chat with a girlfriend, and just allowing yourself to debrief a bit, because often when we're going through that debriefing process and we're talking and we're talking and we're talking, then we get to, okay, right, I see what it's really about. So we can get rid of the whole story that's associated with that, clear some of that emotional charge, and then just allow us to be in a space where we can just talk clearly about what it is. And last week I gave you a template about, saying things like, what I'm feeling is blah, blah, blah. I felt blah, blah, blah when this happened, and what I really would like to be doing, or what I'd really like to happen is blah, blah, blah. And the aim is to be doing that in a calm and connected way. So again, I've done videos about grounding, about connection, about presence, because that is the most powerful time to be communicating that way and to be speaking in your truth. So, when is it good to be speaking in your truth? All the time, most of the time. And when we talk about speaking in your truth, I'm really going to bring in the word expression into here, because speaking your truth isn't just a feeling of words. It can also be a way of expression. It can be a way of finding avenues for you to express yourself. And as you start to learn to value yourself more, as you start to lift your self-worth more, you'll find that if you're drawn to doing things, that's going to help you to do that expression, then do it. So I do singing once a week, I go to rock and roll lessons once a week, and it's just another way for me to express myself and to honor myself in my truth, because it's something that makes me laugh, it's something that lifts my spirits, it lifts my vibration, it makes me feel good, and in doing all those things, it's also helping me to be less reactive, not to get so depressed, or not to get so sad, or not to fall into a lower vibrational space where I'm actually not feeling good. So it's really about me honoring ourselves. So, I just wanted to make a point that, who does make up the rules about social acceptability and what is acceptable and what's not. And, there can be things that can be deemed to be acceptable, in a male society or a male space where they're talking about stuff. And, for females, that's not as acceptable. And as a general rule, women aren't always encouraged to be angry and to connect with those feelings and to be able to speak them out. So if you are finding that you're in a charged space, or you're angry or you're sad or something like that, the most important thing to really be mindful about is that you're not actually dumping that on somebody else. So, when we become into, an independent space, we're talking more about ourselves, and it's not that you did this, you did that, you maybe like that all has to stop, right? That's really dumping shit on people, and it's not nice. It's really not nice. I wanted to just read to you the definition of integrity that I've got it here. So integrity is all about honoring the self. The difference between honesty is when we're actually telling the truth. But the difference with integrity is really about when we're conforming our reality to our own words and to our own beliefs. So when we live in integrity, basically we're avoiding anything that's deceptive, and anything that's beneath being a human being. So, as a human being or as a living organism, we sort of have a basic unspoken rights in part of that and part of our birthright. I'm being very aware at the moment of women who are just not putting up with certain talk and certain language, demeaning conversation, intimidation, bullying. And, because in some ways this interaction of sort of control has been going on for so long, we sort of find it acceptable. And as I said, I wrote a blog this week that, when I was younger, we were told it's a woman's lot. You've made your bed and you lie in it. When I lived in the country, we were aware of, who was the wife basher in the town. And then you would see the teenage son coming up and again talking to his partner in the same way. And that was always deemed to be acceptable because we put up with it. You made your bed and you lie in it. But it's not that way anymore. So people are not taking, being treated in certain ways anymore, and this is all part of this speaking out. So the only way that you can actually change that is to speak out about it, and is to do something about it, is to redefine the boundaries and to say, what, that is really unacceptable. And this happens with my children. If I find that there is a disrespect there for me, and that is a value that I have within my household, then it's very important that I say, how you're talking to me is totally disrespectful. I'm an elder. I'm your parent and I'm your mother, and that tone and the derogatory or the demeaning topic conversation tone is just really unacceptable. And that's really part of what this speaking out is about. So it's being able to say, to know what your boundaries are in regards to the interactions that you have with other people, the behaviours that you have with other people. And your best guidance for that is always going to be how it makes you feel. If you're having a conversation with someone and it does not feel good, then there's a reason why it doesn't feel good. So, you know, where I'm at now in my life, it's like, well, do I really want to have a conversation with that person? Do I want to have that, you know, interaction with that person? If it's going to bring me down, then is that serving me? Or am I going to be more in integrity with myself, and I'm going to start choosing to surround myself with loving, respectful, kind and happy people? So instead of focusing on that, it's just looking forward and saying, okay, well, this is what I want, so this is what I'm going to be focusing to choose and put my energy into. So I know in the past in crazy relationships, like I've lived with quite a bit of domestic violence on and off in my life, and had the crap beaten out of me and all that sort of stuff. But the bottom line is that I was the one who was letting myself stay in that situation. And people can say, oh, I don't know how you put up with it, and why do you put up with it? But it's a lot easy to say that from an outsider person. But if you're sort of in that environment and living with that, it becomes a bit of a game that gets played between two people. But just know that, if you can have some awareness and some validation, we can't change anything until we validate it. So if you can have some validation about, okay, this is what's going on, I don't like it, then you can actually be in a space of changing it. But if you actually are feeling like, my God, I'm a victim of my circumstances, he's doing this to me, they're making it happen to me, they're treating me this way, okay, that is not in a space of acceptance and validation of what's happening. And validation is one of our primary needs that we need to be having in our life. So I was just going to talk about, being authentic, because, speaking out your truth is part of stepping into this space of authenticity. And when we're in authenticity, we are finding that we are authentic beings, being what we want to be. And of course, we are just people having an experience, and we're living our lives, and it's very easy for us to judge ourselves and to criticize ourselves. In fact, most of our population lives in that sort of judgmental, critical realm. So it's a case of lifting yourself above that and allowing yourself to step into a space where you're choosing to surround yourself with different people, and you're choosing to surround yourself with a different environment. So, when we're authentic, we're being very genuine about our expression. And again, the expression isn't just verbal. It can be creative, it can be music, it can be art, it can be exercise, it can be anything, So we also become very genuine about our experiences. So we validate them, we become honest about them, and also about our own self-doubts. So, it is quite easy to process stuff and emotions, and that's the work that I do, and happy to connect with you and teach you easy ways to do that. But when we can actually acknowledge and validate and be genuine about what our concerns and doubts are, then we can be in a space of changing it. So, we can't pretend that everything's great and I'm having this wonderful, abundant life when there's only $5 in the bank. We have to acknowledge that $5 in the bank and say, okay, this is where I'm at. Right now, this is where I'm at. So let's just role play a bit here and say, okay, maybe someone's in a situation, they're finding that fear is very much being a part of their life and it's stopping them from speaking out. So first thing is that acknowledgement, is to acknowledge, what, I'm actually living in fear of speaking my truth. So what could you do about it then? So look at ways to change that fear, whether you reframe that and say, well, yeah, I might be living, with bullying or being bullied, but it's actually teaching me to be a stronger person within myself. We could reframe it in other ways and say things like, well, yeah, I'm living with intimidation, though it's making me a lot more clearer about what I want. Can you feel that shift there from being in a space of, oh my God, I'm being bullied and intimidated, to, well, this can be actually teaching me there's something. So there is a gift in every single thing that we have. You know, the greatest cut is always the greatest learning. And, you know, our lives yesterdays and our yesterdays really makes us what we are today. There comes a point where you sort of have to face that fear and acknowledge it and face it and say, okay, well, I'm actually going to start to speak out. So one thing that I did was say, words that I used to say is, if you continue to talk to me in that way, I'm going to remove myself from the room. And that, I kept doing that for ages and possibly even years, because I had to honour myself and not allow myself to engage in that conversation. So when, you know, a conversation becomes heated, when it becomes reactive, when people are starting to, you know, spit poison at each other and sling abuse at each other, okay, time out, because nothing is actually going to be achieved there. So the other times, so for women, a primary need that we have is safety. We want to feel safe and we want to feel secure. That's a very strong need that we have, more so than men, because we want to feel that. And sometimes we can be in situations where, you know, someone's raising their voice, or if we're talking to our partners and their voices are raised, like we can immediately sort of start to, you know, as soon as the voice goes up and the body language starts to change, then we can suddenly shut down, because we can go inward, or we can become disconnected, or we can step into fear, you know. And that might be a case of actually then speaking out your truth and say, you know, when you raise your voice like that, or when your body language and your tone changes like that, it makes me feel scared, and it makes me feel really insecure, and I find it really hard to connect with you. Because one of our strengths as women is for us to open. Like, open is a very key word for women, to open and to allow ourselves to show that vulnerable and soft side. And to know that, you know, when you're speaking your truth, it's your truth, okay? It's not the truth. It's not the global truth. It's just your truth. And your truth is always going to be true when it comes to talking about what you're feeling and what's happening for you. Sometimes, you know, we just want to debrief and we just want to say things, you know, and I have people say, you know, don't worry about that. Stop talking. You don't need to talk about that. You know, that's the past. And it's like, well, I just want to talk it out. And that could be a time to be doing that with your girlfriends, or the dog, or a pen and paper, and just to allow yourself to clear that clutter out. But if you do feel that there's something that needs to be spoken, just start getting into the practice of talking about it. And, you know, there can still be situations where I want to say something and I have to give myself that little push to actually to be able to say that. So one hesitation that we can have in speaking our truth is expectation. So we think, oh my God, if I say this, then he's going to go crazy. Or if I say that, then the kids are going to avoid me, or they're going to cut me off, and whatever it is. Okay, so if you can just sort of let go of the expectation a little bit and just keep honouring yourself. Now, you know, there will be some element to a situation if you've lived in a certain dynamic and certain connections and relationships with people, and all of a sudden that's changing, then it's going to be like, what's going on, you know? Like, she was quite happy being compliant and going along to get along, or being submissive, and now suddenly she's speaking out. You know, that is going to mean that as you're shifting your energy, the energy of those around you will shift and change as well. And, you know, cause and effect, the outcomes of that could be, yeah, who knows. I know from my personal experiences, the times in my life where I've stood up and said, you know, that is not acceptable. It's actually raised my self-worth, and it's raised my self-value to a higher place, where I'm actually feeling better within myself. And it might take a little while for the dust to settle, but it's like, you know what, I'm worthy of being treated with. Okay, so same with your children. When you're looking at your children and they're communicating with them, you know, make sure you look at them, be present with them, interact with them, and just allow them to speak their truth, and don't judge it, don't criticize it. It's just their truth. It's just them speaking out about whatever it is, okay? Don't need to change it, it's just what it is. So, If you ever want any help or any techniques to help clear anything out, or you want to know more about the work that I do, www.louiseplant.com.au or www.vitae or more seminars. We do seminars, we do amazing breakthrough with people over a 2-3 day period. Whatever issues you want to be sorted out, we can help you find ways to clear that. So contact me, let me know. Otherwise, happy International Women's Month, and I will be back next week. Until then, seeing you always in health and happiness. See you, bye.